Perfect. Hi, everyone. My name is Duvi Sanchez. I'm the Assistant Director of Recruitment for the Graduate School of Education. Thank you for joining us today for tonight's webinar on Learning and Teaching in Social Context, the EdD. Today I'm joined by Dr. Tiffany Noel, who is the director of our program and will be going over this wonderful program more in depth. So now I'll give it to you, Dr.
All right, thank you so much for the introduction and welcome everybody. As mentioned, my full name is Dr. Tiffany Noel, but you can just call me Tiffany, feel free, it's all good. And in the chat for folks who are just coming in, I always welcome folks to just do like a brief introduction, maybe a little bit about where you're from or what your current role is, what interests you in the program. I know that these information sessions tend to go by quickly, so it's hard to devote the time to going around and doing those individual introductions, but we do love to have those things in the chat because it also helps us just, follow up with you after this session if you want to speak further or you have some questions that you feel would be best asked in a one-to-one capacity. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. The first half of this session, I am going to just talk through a lot of the information. So against my best pedagogical practices, I'm going to be talking at you for a little bit. The reason for doing that is just because I know that a lot of times questions that you might be coming in with or questions you didn't even know you had might just be answered through this session. And then there will be ample time at the end for you all to ask me questions. You can be posting them in the chat. I might not see them right away as I'm going through the session, but I will certainly loop back to the information in there and make sure that everything gets answered. And then of course, there is contact information for me right there up on the screen. So if there's something we don't get to or something that you feel is better asked over email or just to me directly, please feel free to use my email anytime. So in talking about our Learning and Teaching in Social Context EdD program, I want to begin with a review of our mission and identity to ensure that folks just understand the ethos of what we do and why we designed this program. We'll talk a little bit about our signature pedagogy, so more around what that experience will be like for you as a student in our classes, working within a cohort capacity. Then I'll talk about sequence and milestones. So what I consider the strategic plan of how and why we structured the course sequence and its associated dissertation milestones accordingly, so that you have a sense of, if I were to join this program, what exactly would I be expected to do? What would that look like on a semester to semester basis over the next 3 years? And then we'll conclude with a review of what's required for the application and just talking a little bit more about, there's already information on the website, but just giving you a little bit more information about what some of those prompts are asking for and some best practices for how to be competitive in those applications. So beginning with the mission and identity. So our Graduate School of Education is committed to creating an inclusive learning environment where diverse perspectives are recognized, respected, and seen as sources of strength, which really manifests in the research and practice that we do within the Department of Learning and Instruction. So being a research-intensive university, we really value groundbreaking research and teaching, and the way that that is operationalized in a Learning and Teaching in Social Contexts EdD program is that we are teaching research-based, evidence-informed approaches for improving practice. So those of you who might be in practitioner-oriented positions right now, maybe you're teachers or administrators or policymakers, or you're maybe even in a different type of position, but working within some sort of social or educational context and feeling like maybe there's ways to do things differently. Maybe there's ways to maximize the impact of what we're doing. And what we teach you in the program is how to conduct the research that helps you effect that positive change that you're maybe aspiring towards, but don't maybe have the techniques in place to get there in a sustainable way just yet. We also, our research and teaching is across learning and instruction, but we also have the other departments within the Graduate School of Education, which include educational leadership and policy and counseling, school and educational psychology, as well as information science. And the reason that I feel this is important to share or valuable to share is because sometimes we have students who come into this program who are coming from interdisciplinary areas, or they might say, I'm not coming from what you might consider like a traditional educational background or K-12 background or higher ed background. And the benefit is that being in the large context of UB and the Graduate School of Education with these different departments is that you have opportunities to take elective coursework even outside of LAI. So if you say like, well, some of what I do is education focused, but then there's also some aspects of it that dip into like counseling or maybe information or library science or educational leadership, there's great opportunities to customize the coursework that you take so that it's at the intersection of what you really value in this experience. So our specific program identity is we're designed within an actionable and justice-focused framework. So our goal is to blend contemporary theory and practice across synergistic learning experiences that produce the next generation of educational professionals, those who are dedicated to addressing, both existing problems of practice, things that have maybe been there for a long time, things that you have observed and so wanted to change, but also some of the things that are maybe a little bit more recent or emergent, things that have maybe come about as a result of the pandemic, or the changes and shifts to remote work and remote teaching and learning. And all of a sudden you've identified this opportunity to tap into those things and use them as an opportunity for change, enhancing practice, and maybe just creating and sustaining improved working environments, improved teaching and learning environments. So that's really the ethos that underpins why we do what we do in this program. A unique feature of our program is that we are members of the Carnegie Project on the Education Doctorate. And so within these slides, there is a link towards the bottom there if you want to learn more about that organization. But what the Carnegie Project on the Education Doctorate is you can think about it like a consortium where you have other programs who are also running EdD programs. We're more unique in that ours is grounded in learning and teaching and on the curriculum and instruction side, which makes us unique because many of the EdD programs out there are designed for educational leadership, preparing, the next generation of educational administrators. And so the reason that we're a part of this consortium is because it grounds us in the best practices for the design of the curriculum, making sure that we're leading edge in what we're teaching, how we're teaching it, the research that we're talking about. And it also just gives us, it aligned with the spirit, of our mission and how we design our cohorts within this program. It gives us this community outside of UB to learn from and with. Like, what are you all doing at your institutions? What is working well? Like, show us the data of that provides some insight into why things might be working as well as they are, but also where are those opportunities for change and continuous improvement and development. So it's always great. There's an annual consortium that usually is taking place during October. They usually have opportunities for students and faculty and staff teaching and working within these programs to get together, share a little bit about the research that's maybe coming out of their programs, showcase what their students are doing. And it's just another, from like a networking and alum perspective, you really begin to develop that community even outside and beyond UB. And a fun note on that, the October 2024 consortium is actually taking place in Hawaii. So even more of a reason to want to join the program and be involved in that session, both with the cohort that is here at UB and then other cohorts across the world. So what does our sequence look like? Like, how is this program broken down? So this is a summer start program, and it only begins in the summers because we do use a cohort model. So the next cohort would be slated to begin in summer of 2024. And that cohort comes in and they take an introduction to doctoral studies with the cohort. It's a really great opportunity to meet other people in the program. And you're spending that first year not only building that community within the cohort and better defining the problem of practice that you seek to study, but also learning a lot about the existing research and theoretical perspectives and content knowledge that's going to foreground the future research that you do. So a lot of students are going to come into the program with maybe an idea of what they want to study, but what we encourage you to do during year one is to go and read and learn about all of the research and all of the knowledge that already exists out there as it relates to your topics so that you can develop that expertise in that particular area and with regard to that particular topic. Year two begins to switch towards focusing more on methods. So if you think of year one as really like where a lot of your content knowledge is built, year two is teaching you the techniques of how to do that research that you came into this program to do. You've identified that problem, you want to do something about that problem, and we're going to give you the tools and the techniques and the methods and teach you how to apply those techniques, and giving you lots of practice and experiential learning opportunities before you're off doing your dissertation. So the value of a cohort model here as well is that you have this whole group of people who is all going through these milestones and experiences together. So there's a lot of just opportunity to dialogue with other people of how are you approaching this? I got a little bit stuck here. Could you maybe talk to me about how you got through that? And so you have those conversations with your instructors, but you also have those conversations with the other students in the cohort so that you feel like you're a part of something. You're a part of a community who is maybe experiencing the program in different ways, but around shared goals and shared milestones. And finally, during year three, which comes up really quickly, this is where you are putting together the final touches of your dissertation in practice. So during years 1 and 2, you will have built a few of the chapters of your dissertation already, and year 3 will be about that culminating piece of bringing together the data that you've collected and that you've analyzed and the findings that you are reporting into that coherent final narrative that becomes a scholarly contribution to the field, and also often a contribution to the local context where you want the work to make a difference, right, or have an impact. So we always say that our program is around developing scholar practitioners because you are defending a dissertation, and that's a scholarly contribution that can benefit researchers and practitioners around the world, but you're also staying true to that practitioner identity that is seeking to use research to affect positive change in actionable ways that can be felt by members of that community that you seek to serve. Okay, so moving along to program credit hours and what do the courses within that whole experience I just outlined look like. So the program requires 60 total credits. And 24 of those credits are coursework centering on a problem of practice, which is what I was kind of describing with regard to year 1. That's learning a lot about the existing knowledge around the problem of practice that you want to study. Lots of those like concentration type courses, maybe the types of courses that you were maybe used to if you completed a master's degree, lots of learning about what's going on in your field. Design and research methods for improving education, that requires 18 total credits. And that's again where we teach you the techniques of how to do the research, right? I want to design a survey. I want to conduct interviews. I want to do focus groups. We're teaching you the techniques. We're teaching you the methodologies so that you feel confident in how to apply that to your own innovative dissertation contribution. And finally, the dissertation and practice credits. These reflect the credit hours that you are taking when you are actually doing your independent dissertation and practice project. So when you're out there in the field, collecting your data, working with your participants, analyzing the data and writing up those findings, that's the credits that you're registering for once you're in what we consider doctoral candidacy stage. So during years 1 and 2, you're typically considered a doctoral student. And then once you defend your proposal and you move on to your full-on dissertation during year 3, that's when you become a candidate. Here is a curriculum map, and it's pretty transparent in that everything that says required, these are the courses that must be on your transcript in order to graduate from the program. I actually think I have maybe a clearer version right up here. So if you see during summer, fall, and spring, you have a couple of required courses, and those are going to be the ones that really prepare you in terms of the foundational content knowledge you need just being a student in a learning and teaching in social context program, as well as some of the research courses that are really beneficial for anybody who is doing those applied approaches to research. So I really want to help the teachers in my school improve this problem. I want to work with the leaders in my district to improve this issue. We're going to be teaching those courses during year 1 so that you have that good foundation for then moving into more of the specialized classes that you might want to be taking during year 2 around your specific problem of practice. So you can see that required courses are peppered throughout the 3 years, and there are also strongly suggested courses. What this means is that we have created courses that are there to serve as a support structure for you when you are writing up various chapters or sections of your dissertation, when you are just working towards specific milestones in the program. But the reason that they're strongly suggested is because we also understand that there might be some semesters where there's a course related to your problem of practice that you really, really want to take and you feel is necessary towards your dissertation. And we want to support that. And we encourage that and say, you do you have to take what you need to take in order to feel like you know what it is that you're researching. In which case, if you choose to not take the strongly suggested course, it's not going to work against you if it's not on your transcript. So we were very intentional about, these are the courses that must be on your transcript in order to graduate. These are the ones that we strongly recommend that you take. But if you don't take them because you see an alternative that you prefer, you don't have to worry about like being set back in the program as a result of that. And finally, where you see electives, this is where it's all just very like, we encourage you to take a course that is related to the problem of practice you're studying, to the field that you're interested in. And again, you'll see that there's both LAI courses up there. There's also some ELP and CEP courses up there, because we understand that a lot of students who come into the program might be taking courses beyond LAI to really inform that robust intersectional problem of practice that they've often identified. And what you'll also see down there that I'm about to jump into is where we have the, at the end of year one spring, we have a pre-qualifying paper and defense. At the end of, or towards the start of the year two fall semester, we have a qualifying paper. The end of spring year two, we have a proposal defense, and the end of spring year three, you have your final defense. And so what each of these milestones is actually building your dissertation as you go year by year. So there are some doctoral programs out there that have you take all of your coursework first, and then during your last year, it's like, all right, time to do your dissertation. We embed the dissertation completion experience into those 3 years so that you are continuously developing your writing, you are continuously developing your research. And by the time you get to the end of year 3, you're really just working on your chapter 4, which is your last chapter, and you're synthesizing that information with the other 3 chapters that you've already been working on during years 1 and 2 of the program. This is a great opportunity to bring coherence to that overall narrative without feeling like I did a bunch of coursework and now I have this huge dissertation lift. It's actually like I've completed about 75% of that lift, and now I really just need to push that last 25% to the best of my ability during year 3, right? And make it a contribution that you're really proud of. So I always put this up here, but with the caveat that this is not comprehensive, because we're a big department, we are a big university. There are so many course options to take at UB, which I think in a context of a program like this is so valuable, because you can usually find a course somewhere around this campus that will benefit your learning about your problem of practice and the development of your research. So as long as the courses that you take, as far as electives go, right, are 500 plus level, so graduate level, they're generally going to count towards your degree. It is very rare that there's a 500 plus level course that we discourage you from taking. So here is just a list of even just a snapshot of other types of courses that are offered within LAI. But again, this doesn't even scratch the surface, because with when you have new faculty come in, or there's new things that are becoming really topical issues in the news, and our faculty are creating special topics, there's always other courses out there and options in addition to what is listed here. So I just say this so that while we have plenty of courses, even if LAI is not housing exactly what you want, there are so many other areas on campus that you may be able to find what you need. Here, so breaking down those program milestones further. So I've ran through coursework, and that for anybody who has gone through undergrad or gone through a master's, all pretty similar stuff. You take the coursework that's required for the program. But in the context of a doctoral program, the dissertation is of course that really big piece that's critically important for graduating. So the way that we break that down is with these milestones, and the pre-qualifying paper is an initial milestone that can be considered a draft of what ultimately becomes the first chapter of your dissertation in practice. So you can see that that's something that you're already working on during year 1 and getting opportunities for feedback from faculty, from peers in the program, so that you can, so that you just have that ongoing opportunity to get input on what you're writing and what you're thinking, so that you can continue to enhance your ideas. Then the qualifying paper is the paper that ultimately develops into chapter 2 of your dissertation in practice. So you can see that even by the second year, early on in the second year, you've already developed a draft of your chapters 1 and 2. That's half of your dissertation. It's not to say that there isn't going to be room for refinement and polishing and developing, but that you already have a draft in place when you're halfway through the program. When you move on to the proposal defense, which occurs at the end of year 2, that is a defense of the drafts of your chapters 1 through 3. And that's including your chapter 1 is like your introduction. What is the problem? What's the significance of what you're studying? Chapter 2 is that background analysis of what's been said about this topic or this problem before. What have other researchers looked at and what have they found? And your chapter 3 is the methods that you propose for gathering new research, right? And generating new insights with interviews, surveys, any other methods that you might use to gather data. And then finally, you have after that, so your proposal defense takes place at the end of year 2, and then your next and final defense is at the end of year 3. So you have a full year in between that time to collect and analyze your data and write up your chapter 4 in preparation for the final defense with your committee. So as you can see, the main takeaways to highlight here are that through each year, you are going to have those opportunities both within your coursework and even in some of the outside of classes advising that happens with your committee to get that continuous feedback so that by the time you're defending your dissertation at the end of year 3, you're like, I actually feel really clear and confident about this dissertation because I've gotten so much feedback on it in the preceding years, right? And that's what we want everybody to do, to feel really confident on defense day. A little bit, I kind of just ran through these at a high level, but just a little bit of information about how this is distinguished from a PhD dissertation. A PhD dissertation which is often around, extending theory and contributing new knowledge to the field. It's often written for what we consider a more restricted community of scholars, because these are the folks who are looking at maybe a really critical issue and wanting to generate new knowledge around that issue, but aren't necessarily as tied to the practical implications or like, what do we do with that knowledge and information to affect positive change within and across educational contexts. And so we have, as you can see in the way that this is laid out, you have your chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, and resulting in your chapter 4, which shows your findings, your implications, your practical recommendations. So maybe implications for practice, for policy, for leadership, but also a dissemination plan. And that's a really distinguishing feature, because your dissemination plan is like, how are you going to take this newfound knowledge and the practical insights generated from it and share it out with your community? Like, who needs to hear this, right? And is it maybe the leaders in your district? Is it maybe like policymakers? Like, where does this information and this knowledge need to go? And your dissemination plan is highlighting how you plan to share that knowledge out there. So again, a PhD dissertation might be more like, this information is going to go into a scholarly journal. And then for those whom it's relevant to, they're going to go find it and they're going to review it and apply it to their research. But for us, it's more about, we want to take this information and present it to people who could use and leverage this data to affect that positive change that brought us to this program in the first place. So different types of options. So a dissertation in practice usually takes 3 types of approaches. So the first one is very exploratory. So a student coming into this program saying, I've identified this problem, it's something I want to study, but we in my context, we haven't actually been talking about this yet. It's something that I've noticed or I've observed. So an exploration study is really just trying to even figure out, what is the problem? Are we sure that it's a problem? Do we have enough information to substantiate that it's an authentic problem? What are maybe the root causes that are causing that problem? It's really just understanding it and gathering the data that's necessary to define and understand it. An intervention or innovation study might be for those folks who are like, we have had this problem in our context for a long time, and we are about to launch this new initiative or this intervention, or we're planning to do something about it. And I want to systematically collect and analyze the effects of that intervention or innovation approach that we're taking. So while an exploration study is just kind of like understanding and defining the problem and figuring out its root causes, an intervention innovation is more like, we know what the problem is and we're kind of ready to do something about it, but we want to actually examine what the effects of those planned changes were, right? Or our attempts to change it. And finally, an outcome study might be something like, let's say that you there was a problem, and one of the initiatives that your community launched to address the problem was putting like a peer mentoring program in place or something. And you're like, I've been running or directing this peer mentoring program for 3 years, but we really don't have good data or have really collected any data at all on like, what has been the impact of it? Like, how is it affecting the students that are currently here or the students that have since graduated? And so you're more so analyzing the effects of something that you have already done or put into place. So it's kind of like almost like the after the post-intervention dissertation and practice. So those are typically the 3 different forms it takes. And the reason I share this is because as you think about what is maybe that problem of practice or that thing that I've been thinking about wanting to study, which one of these does it seem to align with, and how might that be highlighted or alluded to in some way when you actually apply for the program, so that we kind of have an understanding of not only the problem you've identified, but a sense of how you might want to study it. And so that kind of leads us right into the application requirements. So the link that I put up there just takes you to the page, which I presume most folks have seen in order to even know that this EdD information session exists. But all of the information is there on the website. A resume or CV is fine. Just want to know a little bit about your academic and professional background coming in, the statement of educational and career goals. So just, helping us understand why this program, what are some of the educational and career goals that you have in mind, and how do you see this program as being beneficial for helping you meet and achieve those educational and career goals? The problem of practice research statement. So again, like, what is that problem that you've identified? Because of the brevity of this program being a part-time online 3-year program, students coming into year 1, it doesn't mean that your problem that you've identified is going to be articulated to a T and exactly what you're working with for your dissertation. It's natural, like we give you the full first year to let that evolve and ebb and flow as it may, as you're having all these new inputs coming in. But you do want to have a general sense of like, what is that scope? What is that topic that you have observed? Just because, again, the nature of the program moves so quickly that there has to be that thing that you're leaning into as an opportunity to develop a full dissertation around. Your unofficial transcripts from all colleges attended, and then I believe, our admissions office will require those to be official transcripts upon being accepted into the program, and then contact information for 3 professional references. So on that, one thing that distinguishes us from other programs as well, we do not call for letters of recommendation, but rather there will be if you add their information, your reference will receive kind of like a survey that has lots of questions, just kind of rate, strongly agree, strongly disagree. And then of course, there's still room for them to leave comments. But just if you are thinking about applying and you're thinking about references, you're not asking them for letters. You're just letting them know, can I put your name down? And you'll get some sort of automated survey that gives you an opportunity to respond. Also, so just a couple more notes on a problem of practice so that folks are clear about what this means. So it's something that you want to make sure is observable and actionable. So we all know that there are issues out there. As a good example, when I was a PhD student, the problem that I felt I had identified, I was a classroom teacher at the time, I was an English teacher. And I was like, all these teachers are leaving. There's so much teacher turnover and so much teacher attrition, which is just as true today, if not more so than it was a decade ago, right? And so I came to my PhD advisor and was like, okay, I want my dissertation to solve teacher attrition, right? And she was like, I really appreciate your desire to change the world, but we have to think about something that we actually can influence or have the opportunity to affect change. So looking at a problem like that, like teacher attrition, and distilling it down and saying, looking within my local school context or my district, maybe I can gather data on what are some of the most high priority factors that are causing teachers to leave. Is it around compensation? Is it around work-life balance? Is it around lack of autonomy? And then maybe leaning into something that is more specific and focused that I can really narrowly study, so that when I have those practical implications generated from my dissertation, right, they're focused on something that is actionable, something that we can aim to do something about. I gave an example earlier about instituting a peer mentoring program, right? So maybe a peer mentoring program would be something that is created in response to students saying like, I feel like I'm going through this program alone. I don't feel like I have a good sense of community. And so somebody says, well, an actionable step that we might be able to take to ameliorate that is creating something within the system that enables you to have peers to communicate with and connect with, and folks who have stuff in common. So something that is observable and actionable. Again, the brevity of the program, we're not going to necessarily, I wish we could, but we're not going to necessarily solve teacher attrition in the context of a 3-year part-time program, but we can do something that contributes positively to influencing that change that we're all looking for within our contexts. And then some examples on this next slide here, or just some things to think about as you're defining the problem of practice. Is it authentic? Is it an authentic problem, or is it like a pet peeve of mine? And spending some time reflecting on that, right? And maybe talking to people in your local context to differentiate some of those things. Sometimes we feel we've identified a problem, and then when we gather data, we see that actually there's only a handful of people who have identified that as a problem, and most say that it is not. And sometimes it can be difficult to design a dissertation when you don't have that foundation to substantiate that the problem is there. So that's just something to be thinking about. Determining, just the relevance, the researchability of it. What is the existing knowledge base out there? Where am I kind of starting with my understanding of what's been done around this topic before? And then your articulation of the problem. That's really where you arrive at that step of your application, of being able to articulate what the problem is, why you want to study it, why you believe it's a worthwhile pursuit of study. And in some ways, it's just like, if you all remember in school writing persuasive essays, right? Like, just like, persuade us. Why is this a problem worth studying? Like, we want to believe you, right? But you have to show us, you have to substantiate that to us, and think about opportunities to draw from existing literature to do just that. Some examples here are just, just the types of questions that might be asked, or some of the ways that you might think about how those problems are defined. Here on teaching inclusion, like, what is the role of anti-bias education in our classrooms and schools? What does anti-bias education look like in our curriculum? What are some relevant community issues that we would like our classes in school to actively address to better integrate, inclusive teaching, inclusive pedagogy in ways that lead to the development of more inclusive young people and leaders and students. And things like here in the building a community of learners might be an example of something that a classroom teacher might be asking, like, how do the assignments in my classes support effective group learning? How am I defining what effective group learning looks like? What teacher behaviors support productive group learning? And maybe the reason these questions are being asked are because the problem you've identified is challenges with effective group learning, right? Like, I'm trying all of these things and things aren't working and I have to try something else, right? And so we're going to encourage you to go into the literature and identify those opportunities to try things that we know are evidence-based, and see how that might influence, the success of using those types of methods. So tips for getting started, just briefly, once you are in the program, thinking about finding mentors and building committees. So we have the benefit of being a cohort model, right? So you start, everybody actually, I'm the director of the program, so everybody starts with me during the first year as their advisor. You are always welcome to, once you find maybe other faculty in our department whose research areas maybe overlap or are more closely aligned with your topics of interest, you can always change advisors. If you decide to continue with me, you still build a committee of 3 total faculty members within UB, so that you can get that pluralism of perspective from other experts that have experience and knowledge related to your POP topic. And even sometimes the methods that you intend to use, right? If you're going to use a sophisticated survey instrument, we're maybe going to want a faculty member who knows that instrument on your committee. You can think outside of LAI if that makes sense. We actually see a decent amount of this in the EdD program, because folks might have mentors in their professional contexts who, if they have a terminal degree, are eligible to serve as an optional 4th committee member. So you might have that mentor who has maybe even encouraged you to go into a program like this, and they can actually be somebody who serves on your committee and supports your work, as long as the first 3 committee members are from UB. Another thing is engaging with the UB community, reading faculty scholarships. So we all have UB profiles out there, but beyond that, most, if not all, have quite a few. Being a research intensive university, we all have quite a few publications that are floating out there. So even just Googling the names of the faculty that interest you, seeing what they've been publishing on, because that can be helpful to weave into your application as well, right? Who are you interested in working with and why? So we can just get a better sense of how to make sure that your time, even from the onset of entering the program, you feel connected to the perspectives and the experience and the expertise that you feel is going to be the most valuable for enriching your 3-year experience. And even beyond that, because we, of course, hope that you stay connected as an alum. So ways to get involved, we have our GSE events page linked there. And just, in addition to sessions, like information sessions like this, anytime that there's maybe a talk or something that's open to the public, just to get a sense for the different types of projects and the scholarship that comes out of UB and the people who are doing that work that maybe appeals to you as a potential synergy to connect your own research interests to. So with that, I believe that's my last informational slide. So I want to just go into Q&A and remind you that my contact information is there if there is anything that I didn't ask that you do want to talk about after today's session. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing and just open it up for questions.